Dear citizens of the West, it's time we hold our leaders responsible to stand up for our ideals, to stand with the innocent, to listen to those with no power, to act with our safety and freedom in mind, even, or should I say, especially when it means they lose face, money or power. This is not what is happening now. This is not what our leaders have been doing for a very long time. Russia has invaded Ukraine. Innocent people on Ukrainian soil are dying. Ukrainian and Russian soldiers are dying. Who is to blame? Let me be clear. What Putin is doing in Ukraine is horrible and very, very sad. And worse than that, so far he is playing by the rule set up by us in the West.
Well, many of us did not believe Russia was going to invade Ukraine. Obviously, we got this one wrong. But for many years, people from policy experts to world leaders have been warning that the West's NATO expansion towards Ukraine would result in exactly what's happening now.
These rules are, number one, if what is happening in any country in the world constitutes a threat to your security, then you must and have the right to defang that nation of its military powers, to defuse the threat.
In 2015, international relations expert John Mersheimer talked about how we're purposefully baiting Ukraine to take a hard line with Russia under false promises of inviting them into the West.
Number two, you must tell everyone you will go in with precision weapons and only target military facilities.
But I actually think that what's going on here is that the West is leading Ukraine down the primrose path.
Number three, you shall point out that you do this for the good of the people that are oppressed in the country you are attacking, or at the very least for the freedoms and safety of your own people.
And I believe that the policy that I'm advocating, which is neutralizing Ukraine and then building it up economically and getting it out of the competition between Russia on one side and NATO on the other side, is the best thing that could happen to the Ukrainians.
Number four, you will not have to spell out, but silently imply that unfortunately collateral damage will be done and innocent civilians will be hurt. But as you have stated, you do it for their good, so you have decided that it is a price you are willing they should pay.
And of course, the Ukrainians are playing along with this. And the Ukrainians are almost completely unwilling to compromise with the Russians and instead want to pursue a hardline policy. Well, as I said to you before, if they do that, the end result is that their country is going to be wrecked. And what we're doing is, in effect, encouraging that outcome.
Now I ask you, has Putin or any representative for Russia broken any of these rules? Sadly, I propose they have not. So, to all leaders of the West, step up and take responsibility for the mess you have created. Sit down with Russia and agree. Enough is enough for all parties.
Biden also said Putin had rejected repeated efforts at diplomacy, but many of us are wondering what those diplomacy attempts were. Russia has been clear for nearly 3 decades now. No NATO on their borders. They've said it over and over and over again, and yet we've continued to expand. We've expanded NATO and invaded and occupied various areas of the Middle East. Europe has created a union of member nations, and yet all the while we've been accusing Russia of wanting to reestablish the USSR. We've even put missiles up to their border in our NATO member states as a response.
Dear media, call them out. Ask them to prove to me they have earned my trust. Ask them to show me all they have done, that they done all it took to not provoke or allow this situation to develop. Ask them to show to me they are the professionals I require to maneuver international affairs to avoid war and promote prosperity.
Those same neocons are shocked Putin actually said arming Ukraine is a red line and meant it. He wasn't bluffing, and he's not going to back down.
For now, I blame USA. I blame EU. I blame NATO. I also blame the government of the Ukraine state to have totally failed to act with the Ukrainian people in mind to prevent this from happening.
But ultimately, my point is, the dog barked and barked and growled and growled. People even pointed year after year that the dog is growling and dangerous, yet we kept taunting the dog, and now the dog is attacking. And we're sitting here acting shocked, claiming that there was no provocation on our end.
To the Ukrainian people, I am sorry. Russia do not allow you to become a member of NATO. I am sorry. Russia does not allow you to become a member of the EU. I am sorry. The world may even divide you up into separate countries. I ask of you to make this sacrifice for my security. I ask of you to make this sacrifice for the security of the citizens of EU. I ask of you to do this sacrifice for the lives of those now dying in a war that was not yours to fight. A war we in the West have lured you into fighting.
We're giving them this emboldening, we're emboldening Ukraine to make them feel like they can go and confront Russia. And now you've got Zelensky begging, right? Just begging to be admitted into the EU, asking, we need a no-fly zone. So basically, help us go to war with Russia on our behalf, begging for this. Let us into the West. Let us into your world. And then you've got Biden almost insultingly yesterday at the State of the Union address saying, we're not going to go into Ukraine. We're not going to battle Russia, but NATO, we're going to protect our NATO nations. And if there's any sort of provocation on our NATO nations, then we're going to use the full force of NATO to counter it, which we don't even know. Like I said, we've never actually gone to war with the Soviets head on or with Russia head on. Right now, we don't want to. We're looking at it like, oh my, that would be nuclear annihilation, for everybody, the world. So would we really, if push came to shove?
A war, Russia has been very clear. They may feel forced to fight with you. Did you bring the West and NATO military and influence too close to the Russian border? If you fight, I will stand by you and not by your government. They have failed you. If you stand down, I will stand by you and hold my leaders and Russia responsible to provide you with the elections, with free elections, with financial support and freedom to live in pursuit of happiness and prosperity. Whatever you decide to do, I will stand by the innocent.